Continuing with the third part of the institution that did not consolidate it. 2. We are discussing and analyzing this issue about translations. And as we have expressed, it is very important that the words keep the essence of things. If not, we corrupt them and we steal their true meaning. We were talking about Matthew 24:14, and as we have established in that point, Jesus the Messiah, our Lord, talks about the following. First, letter A, it is established as a true fact that there exists a good news, not gospel, right? Because the word gospel doesn't say anything. The correct translation should have been and is the good news. That is why we consider that it should have been known as the good news of the kingdom, not the gospel of the kingdom, but the good tidings or good news of the kingdom. Second, letter B, that it is a good news that must be proclaimed in the world. And as third, letter C, that when that occurs, the end will arrive. This passage is a very interesting passage. Many do not give it the importance it deserves, do not encase in it some valid consideration or any at all, but rather they underestimate it. They read it and do not give it much of importance to it. And that occurs because, and there it lies the ignorance of the people, it occurs because people ignore things. When a person studies prophecy or studies revelation, there are a series of principles and elements and variables that need to be developed. Some develop it through a prophetic map. Others develop it through different events or chain of events. And others form a sort of vision that needs to be wide enough to capture the most important elements. So you will observe that many people begin to express their points of view regarding as how the end of the world will be, or the end of things. Others call it the end of the times. And you will see that in the structuring that they have about the end of things, they never talk that there has to be a proclamation of the good news of the kingdom, not of the gospel. And here it comes a contradiction that we will not address because of matters of space and time. There exists a good news of the kingdom, and there exists a gospel of Jesus Christ. Both of them are incompatible. They do not look anything alike, are opposite one another. And maybe you will be surprised and say, well, what are these people talking about? But the Church of God has very clear that Jesus the Messiah was the bearer of a message, was not the message in himself, was the bearer of the message. And he always expressed as the messenger, as God's messenger, and always expressed his qualities and his attributes and gifts, but never took away God's glory. And that is why he sentences in Matthew 24:14 a fact that has to be inlaid, that has to belong, that has to be a variable to consider, to understand when the end of things will come. Because if the good news of the kingdom are not preached, the end will not come. For more than 2 millenniums, the gospel of Jesus Christ has been preached because the Paulines created this gospel, and this is the gospel that has been proclaimed almost all around the world. But half the world has been kept waiting for the end, and have asked themselves why it has not come, if supposedly the gospel has already been preached to all nations. Returning to what we have been discussing in the study, in the teaching, for the Church of God it is established that Jesus is the truth, right? He himself said it, I am the way, the truth, and the life. It's a topic that is not under discussion. It can only be accepted and not discussed. It can be analyzed, studied, delved, be known, but is not under discussion because he is the personification of the truth, right? That will not be discussed. So he, as authority, is above all the others. We talk about apostles, prophets, teachers, servants, right? That is neither discussed. So we have a serious problem because the good news of the kingdom are not even known which they are. If you ask the studious people which is the good news of the kingdom, the first thing is that they will confuse it with the gospel of Jesus Christ. That is how they call it. We consider that Jesus is the Messiah. It's not Jesus Christ because the word Christ doesn't tell us anything. The word Messiah, yes, because it talks about a past, about a history, a prophecy, and about a very well and very clear and specific manifested divine will for those that understand. So we have a serious problem here because one thing is the good news of the kingdom and another thing is the gospel of Jesus Christ. They are two totally distinct things. And as you can see, they have commercialized the gospel of Jesus Christ to industrial extremes that they have made and unmade with it in that way, made and unmade with it. And the Paulines have terribly increased this bubble of confusion because even they are also confused. And if you do not believe us, just look how many religious groups are born every day, or in weeks, or in months. Just see it by yourself. And they put themselves different flamboyant names, and they do and undo. That is why we consider to be important that we can analyze and study this matter of the institution that is not consolidated or did not consolidated. Because through this study, this teaching, we will be learning things that are so elemental and fundamental that should have been known or and taught beforehand. We repeat once again, the Messiah has his doctrine. The Paulins and Pedrasts or Pedrists have their own doctrine that has nothing to do with the one of the Messiah. That is why, as a valid and fundamental fact, we establish that Matthew 24:14 is a sign that allow us to understand whether we are right or we are wrong. That is why it is important to study this verse, because it allows us to capture and understand that there is a problem, and that until these words of Jesus are not fulfilled, the end will not come. Not the words of Peter, not the words of John, not the words of Paul, not the words of any other, but the words of the Messiah himself. And we believe these words are fundamental to repeat them once again, because this allows us to understand with clarity where we are and where we are heading to. We remember you that the translation that we are using is the World English Bible. It gathers in chapter 24, verse 14, the following: This good news of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world for a testimony to all the nations, and then the end will come. As simple as that. And we repeat it because we want it to be embedded in your mind, and that you can see with clarity that we have a serious problem, and this serious problem is fundamental to be debated, so that we can start taking away the religious aspects and start accepting the truth such as it is. That has nothing to do with Paulists or Pedrists. Why? Because the truth is the truth. So now we know as a point, when we begin studying prophecy or when we interpret the book of Revelation, that as long as the good news of the kingdom are not preached to all the world for testimony to them, the end will not come. And you can observe this allows you to have a first contact of the things without contamination from the things that are contaminated. We believe and we hope that you can give yourself an opportunity to analyze what we are saying. We do not ask you to believe us, but we ask you to investigate it, because normally people embrace faith in a blindly way and do not investigate anything. And that is not right. We must know the why of things, and we are from the criteria that the questioning is valid. We must question the things and ask why, because the why is valid. We remember you to visit the webpage of the church so that you can ask for a lesson if you are interested. The address is churchofgod.tk. Also, you can write us to our email, thelastchurch7 in number, gmail.com. If you have a doubt, a question, you can make it. The same if you have a commentary or want a specific topic to be addressed. We will gladly take it into account. Thank you.